Hi everyone, namaste. So we continue our discussion, investigation about Jesus the Christ in India. So about this possibility that something like 15, maybe 17 years Jesus the Christ really spent in India learning philosophy and meditation. And this is the second video, and I'm planning to make actually a lot of videos about this really interesting and important question, not only for Christians but just esoteric people and meditation practitioners, because Jesus Christ is not just okay, let us say, founder of Christianity, but this is the huge spiritual master, divine messenger, and and his influence is a huge, even of course outside Christian churches, and for all people who are spiritual seekers. And this is a really interesting and important question. Was Jesus in India, and what we actually know about this question, if so? Well, of course I'm not going to repeat all the interesting and important information which we discussed in my previous video, but anyway, we started in previous video our quest of the first question was, and actually is, the personality of the Nicholas Natovich. Very interesting and a bright personality, the first guy who actually introduced this idea about possibility that Jesus Christ spent many years in India. Nicholas Natovich lived in the end of 19th century, and he passed away beginning of 20th century, and he was Jewish born, Russian citizen, a very important and famous journalist of that time, end of 19th century. And in our previous video we analyzed with many details the life story, biography of Nicholas Natovich. Actually, he was, let me repeat, Jewish born, but he became Orthodox Christian, and he was, according to my personal opinion, really interesting in Christianity, in the message of Jesus. And for him to become Christian at that time was not only social kind of support for his career, and of course in Russia in 19th century it was really much easier to become famous and successful journalist if you are Orthodox Christian. That was the reality of that time. But according to my personal opinion, Nicholas Natovich was real Christian. He was really interested in Jesus' message, so that was his biography. 1887 he went to India, and the reason why he went there, because he wanted to prove this idea that Jesus the Christ spent years in Himalayas, and not only in Himalayas, in the east coast of India, in Puri. Puri is the very big pilgrimage center in the east coast. Puri is the way how Indians pronounce the name of this very important holy city, and in English sometimes people pronounce it as a Puri. Doesn't matter. Okay, this is a very important city, holy city, just on the east coast of India, and this city is important and famous because of one of the biggest Hindu temple, and the name of this temple is Jagannath. So it's a Krishna or Vishnu temple, and according to information which Nicholas Natovich brought to the West, okay, Jesus spent some years in east coast of India, and then he went to the Kashmir, to the mountains, to the Himalayas. Okay, I strongly recommend you to watch my previous video if you didn't watch it yet, because we're discussing in our previous videos the possibility from, possible sources from where Nicholas Natovich actually received all this precious information about a possibility that Jesus was in India, and exactly information about Himis monastery, because remember, Nicholas Natovich went to India, directly to India and directly to the Himis monastery in Himalayas, and in my previous video we're discussing all the sources of this information. We're not going to repeat this extremely interesting information right now. We're just let us continue and ask the next bunch of questions, and well, to think about next and the next very interesting questions about Nicholas Natovich. And one of that very interesting question is, was he in India at all? So let me repeat this interesting question. Was Nicholas Natovich in India at all? Is it so that he really went to Kashmir, Ladakh, Leh, and later on to the Himis monastery? Because even at that time, actually in the end of 19th century and in the beginning of 20th century, many people who really were angry with this message which Nicholas Natovich brought to the West, many people just told, okay, but how can we be sure that this guy went there? Maybe that's all just his fantasy. Well, okay, let me tell you what I think about this accusation. I'm sure that Nicholas Natovich really was in that part of Himalayas, and the reason why I'm sure that he was there, because if you take and read his extremely interesting book, and the title goes like that, Unknown Life of the Jesus Christ, and he published this book 1894. Let me remind you, he went to India 1887, but the publication of his book Unknown Life of the Jesus Christ is 1894. And the reason why there is a gap between his journey to India and the publication of the book, because it was not easy to publish it. Actually, when he came back to Russia, wrote this book and just tried to publish it. It was absolutely impossible. Actually, he went to Europe and it was possible to publish it only there, because slightly less influence of the church communities. I believe that Nicholas Natovich really visited Kashmir and Ladakh, because when you read his very interesting book, which is Unknown Life of Jesus the Christ, he is describing his journey in such details that it's possible only if author really went there. So, end of 19th century, no internet, and it means only the choice for Nicholas Natovich to to write his book with so huge number of exactly description of the place and the journey and the way how they went through all that areas. The only chance was just to go there physically. So that's the reason why I believe, I trust that he really went there. Because actually we are sure that he was in India, but discussion is, was he really in Himalayas and in that Kashmir area? Okay, let me say yes, he was there. Because of analyzing his book, we can be sure that he really went there. Well, when he came to the Hemis monastery for the first time, actually lamas, Buddhist teachers and a priest of this Hemis monastery refused to speak with him, to communicate with him, and they absolutely refused to answer his questions about Jesus the Christ and about this very secret manuscript which we suppose that was in the library of this monastery. Can you imagine Western journalist, Western person just entering Hemis monastery and ask pretty much cool questions? I mean, hi dear lamas, I know that most probably you have this manuscript, can you show it to me? And I think that was a pretty much shocking question. Well, how it's possible that this Western journalist knows about all that, and of course all the details we discussed in my previous video, but actually the first attempt to communicate with the lamas was unsuccessful. Okay, I may imagine how disappointed Nicholas Notovich was when lamas refused to speak with him, and so he went back. And when he was on his way to Leh, capital of Ladakh, he actually fell down from the horse and broke his leg. Okay, first aid, first medical treatment he received from the British medical doctors. Okay, after that, Nicholas Notovich chose to come back to the Hemis monastery and stay there. That's interesting bunch of facts, because first of all we have a report from the British military medical staff that really in that year 1887 one Russian journalist broke his leg. So it means that one more proof, and a serious one, that Nicholas Notovich really was there. Okay, Nicholas Notovich decided to go back to the Hemis monastery because with such a difficult conditions, it was impossible for him to continue his journey back to Bombay. Now we call this wonderful city Mumbai. Okay, but he chose to go back to the Hemis monastery, and it's absolutely obvious that he decided to use this broken leg as an excuse to come back. And actually it was very successful trick, because he came back to the Hemis monastery and told to the Buddhist teachers and the priests and the monks to the lamas finally. Okay, they, oh come on, that's me again. I have a problem. May I stay for a while in your monastery because, okay, I fell down from the horse, blah blah. And it was really interesting that after he came to the monastery, Hemis monastery, for the second time with a broken leg, then Buddhist monks choose to, okay, to be slightly more open and more kind to these Western journalists, and they let him to stay for a while in the monastery, and they started to speak with him, to communicate with him and answer his questions, at least some of them. It's looked like that after direct request question which Notovich offered to the lamas, okay guys, I know that you have this manuscript, can you show to me the one? And it's difficult to say why, but it's looked like lamas really decided to use Nicholas Notovich as the tool, and through him to inform Westerners about this manuscript. And lamas really brought and just put in front of Notovich this ancient manuscript about life of Jesus in India. And with the help of it's looked like Indian translator, Indian interpreter, Notovich could make a copy, and that's how Notovich could later on include this translation into his book, which is Unknown Life of the Jesus the Christ, which he published in Europe 1894. Is it real or is it fake? Because of course many Christian churches and many priests and many even independent scientists, they strongly and strictly refuse to accept this translation as a genuine one. Christian churches and Christian bishops and priests, they are not ready to accept this manuscript because of theological reasons. And many Christian priests and bishops from all actually churches, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Anglican, Baptist, they deny, they reject the possibility and idea that this manuscript can exist. They deny it strictly and strongly because according to the Christian churches, it's diminished the importance of the churches, all churches, and diminish the importance of Jesus the Christ himself. Let us be open to the discussion, because for me personally, the historical fact that Jesus Christ was a student in India, that's not diminishing his divine message and mission. And I can't understand what is the problem if we know now that Jesus the Christ spent years and years in India learning philosophy, Vedic Hindu philosophy and Buddhist philosophy and different kinds of meditation. How it can diminish his importance for us as the messenger of God and great spiritual figure, that I'm Christian, though I spent years and years in India learning Hindu, Vedic and Buddhist philosophy and different kinds of meditation, and I'm practicing myself Kriya Yoga meditation and mantras, and I teach people Kriya Yoga meditation and mantras. And okay, at the same time I'm Christian, and for me this fact that Jesus was learning meditation and philosophy in India, well, it's really very interesting fact, and it's then I may understand, by the way, New Testament message much better. Of course, the message about love and compassion, that's the really foundation of Jesus' message, and that's also pretty much Buddhist one, the message about compassion as the really foundation of spirituality. That's not Old Testament, this is purely Buddhist approach. So it means actually when we know and try to collect more information about years which Jesus spent in India, then we can understand the New Testament actually better. Most probably I'll dedicate one of my next videos to analyze, bit by bit, this manuscript which Nicholas Natovich brought from Himalayas, and actually my opinion that this is fake. Well, Christian bishops and priests, they deny it because they don't want to admit this Christian tradition was born out of Jesus, who received his education in a Hindu and a Buddhist temples. That's not nice idea for the church leaders. Okay, that I may understand. Scientists are very much questioning this information from Nicholas Natovich, because they ask obvious question. Come on, guy, if you are brought from Himalayas copy translation of this manuscript by but itself is a strange. Where is the master copy? Just can you imagine if Natovich bring the master copy, I mean the original manuscript, that is itself a huge proof, and then that's the end of discussion. But what he brought is translation, and then many scientists, they asking the question, okay, maybe Natovich wrote this actually himself. I am not a Christian bishop or a Christian priest, and I'm not a scientist. And I have my own approach, which is not church-like, religious one, and it is not so-called scientific one. And I am as an esoteric author, as esoteric expert, I have my own tools. How can I analyze this information? And actually, right now I can say my opinion is that Natovich actually wrote this manuscript, so-called translation, okay, himself, and actually it's a fake one and very childish. When I read line by line and chapter after chapter, I see a lot of confusing mistakes and let me say again very childish stuff in this text, and for me it's obvious proof that this so-called translation actually created by Natovich himself, but at the same time it is not destroying the idea of Jesus in India, because we have many other sources about Jesus in India. Because I strongly believe that Natovich really was in Ladakh, Leh, and finally in this Hemis monastery. And I strongly believe that those people who gave to him basic information, like, you know, guy, you have to go to exactly Hemis monastery, that people, and okay, most probably that's the Theosophical Society people, they also knew about this manuscript and information, but most probably Natovich didn't see actually this manuscript, and I believe that this manuscript actually exists, but Natovich didn't see it because Buddhist masters from Hemis monastery most probably didn't show this manuscript to the Natovich. And you know, because he was there, but he didn't get a chance, you know, to touch, to see, to read this manuscript. He just invented it, he just created it out of his fantasy, but unfortunately with a lot of mistakes, and that's by itself is the proof for me, and I'll prove you in one of my next videos about it, that it's just his fantasy. But at the same time, even if this manuscript, this so-called translation by Natovich is a fake, according to my opinion, anyway, I really believe that Jesus Christ received his education, spiritual education in India, because we have many other sources. For example, we know that great Yogananda Paramahamsa, who is the author of the most famous spiritual book of 20th century, which is autobiography of a yogi, this Yogananda Paramahamsa was absolutely sure that Jesus was in India. And Nicholas Roerich, great Russian artist and mystic, was also sure that Jesus spent years in Himalayas. And my meditation Kriya Yoga master Yogi Ramach, he told me that really Jesus spent years in Himalayas, and his personal guru, I mean Jesus' personal guru, was Mahavatar Babaji himself. And finally Sathya Sai Baba also told to his devotees, few times actually it's happened, when Sathya Sai told to his devotees that yeah, really Jesus spent years in Himalayas, and there is such a manuscript with this information, but you know, Sathya Sai never prove that the one which Nicholas Natovich brought from Himalayas is the one. So it means most probably manuscript exists somewhere in libraries, somewhere in Tibetan Buddhist monasteries. And the question is, well, the middle of 20th century is a very difficult time for the Tibetan culture, and we know that now Tibet is the part of China. And I don't want to go into political discussion, and I don't want to support this or that side of this conflict. But okay, let us be gentle about all that political questions, but just okay, now Tibet is the part of China, and and many monasteries there back in 60s were destroyed, and who knows what's happened with this manuscript. I mean, is it still available somewhere in the libraries, or is it just gone? Well, okay, let me complete this video for today, and I'm planning to continue my research, and you will see next videos. This video was number 2, and if you didn't watch previous one, please do it, because it's very important. And the next videos going to come. God bless you. See you next time.